Remain standing. I'm going to open up this time to remain standing. I want to open up this time to interview someone who you may not know, but you need to know him, because what God has done in his life is a paradox. I believe it's important that you know and you get to meet people who God has taken their life and turned it into a paradox. It doesn't make sense, but when you hear a story, it'll make all the sense in the world. So will you please give Jerry Lorenzo a big round of applause as he comes today. Come on, Heart Revolution. Creator of Fear of God. Thank you, Jerry, for my jacket. You may be seated. How many of you have heard Jerry Lorenzo's designs, Fear of God? Can I see your hand? Okay. Those of you that have not, it's okay. You're going to meet him today, and you're going to love him. Jerry, for many people, it's an anomaly that you're here. Some people don't, like, how did this happen? I would like for you, if you could just take a minute and just talk to people about how we ended up here.
How we connected, you
Yeah.
and I? My wife and I go to church at Faithful Central in Los Angeles, and Sergio came a week and a half ago and just, brought an incredible message and talked about paradox and how God can use us. And I just saw his heart for the least of these, and watched his video about the church and prison, and there's the quote up there from the Bible that just says, if you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. And it just hit me really hard, man. And I love to see believers in this day and age that are focused on the least of these. It's so easy to focus on what's influential or what's popular, but God's heart is for the least of these. And I was so touched by the message, and we bought some books after for my brother and my wife's brother and her cousin, or her nephew. And I just shot you a message on Instagram where I think I left a comment like, yo, great message. And then you slid in my DMs after that.
You would too, stop it. Well, and then what was cool is that my kids started blowing up my phone. Dad, Jerry Lorenzo commented. I'm like, who's Jerry Lorenzo? All I knew is that he's verified. This guy's verified. And then they started breaking down to me, the Fear of God guy, Dad, the Fear of God guy. And I was like, wow. So I just thought it's so important that you, especially anyone here who knows the clothing of Fear of God, meets the man behind the product. Because I think when you do, you'll understand more of his heart and not just admire what God's given him to create. Jerry, talk to us about how you grew up. Because, most people, they've only met you in the rise, but they didn't know you in the valley. And I have to imagine that, like that song started from the bottom, now you're here. But, oh, come on, you guys, I'm just trying, guys. I know I'm 51. Help me, man. It's like, okay, you guys, tell us a little bit about your journey and just what it was like, how you fell in love with designing.
I grew up in a Christian home. My parents been married, 40 plus years. I've had an example of God's love in front of me through my parents. And my dad was in professional baseball the majority of my life, and it was kind of I don't want to say a paradox, but kind of my dad was, for the majority of my life growing up, he was like a minor league coach. And when he finally made the big leagues, he was on a minor league coach's salary. So we were around, millionaires and, really big stars at the time. But we were a check-to-check family. And so there was this cool thing around the grace of God on our family with what my dad did for a living. But the reality was, we were check to check, and I didn't have a Nintendo growing up, and I couldn't afford Jordans and things like that. But my parents always had something that all of these big league ball players and their wives wanted, which was integrity and a love for God and high character and a family that was so close knit as we were. So I grew up thinking, I went to college. I played baseball. I wasn't good enough to make it to the big leagues or get drafted. But I figured my only way to make it in life would be to get a job in baseball, because that's what my dad did. And as a black kid growing up in America, like, if that's your way to get in, that's your way to get in. And I never thought that God had gifted me with something outside of what my dad did. I never thought that I could have my own, or I could do my own, or work for myself. And so, again, I went to grad school, and all through grad school I worked retail and was really good at retail. Was able to, if somebody walked in the door, I knew exactly what we had for them. I could kind of like scan them and know what they needed or what they were looking for. I had a knack for that, but never thought that I would be using that ability in what I'm doing now. And I think we talked about it earlier at your house. And growing up in a Christian home, my parents always told me, you could do whatever you wanted, and with God in your life and following Him, you can do all things through Christ. And so I grew up believing that, but I don't know that I knew that. And I think what we talked about at your house, it wasn't until like Barack Obama became president, and I was like bawling for like hours. And I was like, man, I can become president. And it was I grew up thinking I could do all things through Christ, but I can't be president. Or, I could do all these things, but I can't do that, until I saw someone that looked like me do that. And so fast forward to kind of where I am now, all I'm trying to do with Fear of God is break down the mental barriers in the minds of the marginalized, of the minds of kids that look like me, and the minds of kids that grow up thinking that, hey, that's really cool, but that's not for me. And I'm trying to break those walls down to say that, you can do all things through Christ.
Come on, heart rap. So, the theme of the conference is kingdom culture. And the idea of the conference is to inspire a generation to live, to bring the culture of the kingdom to earth. As it is in heaven, so let it be on earth. You're influencing culture. And you have influence in places of culture that most pastors and people don't. For instance, you've influenced Kanye West, Jay-Z, Bieber. So you're in the epicenter of modern culture today. They're wearing your clothes, they're admiring you. So I'm going to just ask you a bold question. How do you keep yourself pure and unspotted in the midst of the world? Because most of us are been told as Christians, don't love the world, don't be part of the world, stay out. But you're like, God has you like right in the center, and your clothing isn't like, think about God. You're like, fear God. How do you do it?
The reality was, when I started working for, you mentioned Kanye like 5 or 6 years ago, like my life wasn't what it is now. And I wasn't.
What was your life like?
I was partaking in everything else that everyone else was, whether it's partying, whether it's women, or whether it's, alcohol, or whatever those things may be. And one night I'm partying, the next night I'm trying to build a brand called Fear of God, and I was two different people. And it wasn't until like 2.5 years ago where I literally came to the end of myself. And I said, God, if I'm not doing this for you, just take it away. And know that if I'm so graced to continue to do this for you, that I'm doing this for you. And I think there comes a point in your life where you just have to be about something. You have to be about, what you say you're about and what you believe in. And I was in a super dark place. And again, I came to the end of myself. And like I was saying, I grew up in church. And it's one thing to hear you can be all things through Christ and do all things through Christ and take that as truth, but it's another thing to be in personal relationship with Jesus and it's really real to you. And so you ask, how do you say spotless now? And I can't imagine myself being in there and not being connected to the Creator and not being connected to the person who put me here. And I know that I'm only here because of His grace, And so there's a freedom in that. And so it's I'm here because God has me here. So it's God, what do you want me to do while I have this platform? And knowing that if He took that platform, that I'm okay with that because I'm only here because He has me here. What else do you want me to do?
You should clap more than that. It's not a small platform. I want you to talk to a Jerry that's in the room who's about 19, 20. That's maybe is gifted, talented, but is still caught up. What would you say to them?
Oh, man. I think about the praise song that was just on, the reckless love of God, and just how he never stops coming after you. He never stops pulling on you. But we were thrust from eternity into time. And we have to recognize that we're only here for a little bit of time. And you can't afford to not listen to that call. Know that as much as He's calling you, as much as He's nudging after you, that there is an expiration date on us while we're here. And when you hear from Him, I just, listen to Him. Listen to that voice. And, if there's anything that I can say from what may appear to be success from social media, and you and I both know that kingdom significance is very far from what you see on social media.
Can you say that again?
I just really believe that kingdom significance is so far from what we think, significance is here on earth. The most significant thing could be reaching the one person in prison that changes the world, or you know what I mean? It's we think we know, and we think because, hey, you're reaching a lot of people that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but we don't really know how God is working, And all we can do is trust and be obedient and say, God, use me, And I think it's you're asking how do I do it? I mean, it's I gotta be Jerry Lorenzo, the Son of God, the Father, the Son, the husband, 100% of the time. There's no time where you can, come to conference tonight and then tomorrow kind of do your thing. You gotta be about it, and you think that you're living in this framework or these walls of what I can't do because I'm a Christian, until you find out the freedom inside that. I feel like I went on a tangent. I don't know where I was going, but
you're doing really well.
I forgot what you asked.
You answered the question well. Let me ask you one more question. How did you come up with the idea of doing clothing called Fear of God?
My parents and I were doing a devotion. We were reading about clouds and darkness around the kingdom of God. Righteousness and integrity are the foundations of His throne. And this was like, 5-6 years ago. And for the first time in my mind, I had a really, I hate to use this word, cool image of God. Growing up in church, it was always kind of light, but it just felt really dark and gangster, like, clouds and darkness around the throne.
I like that.
Yeah, and I was like, the clouds and darkness, not necessarily darkness, but spoke to like the layers and depths of God. Like wow, like the only way to not be fearful of him is to be in relationship with him. And so I like this juxtaposition of like fear of God, having a reverence for him, but then a fear of God, like if you don't know him, you kind of are scared. And so having worked in retail and having a bunch of friends that, started a bunch of streetwear brands, I felt like, okay, now I really have something that I can build a brand on. This fear of God that feels gangster, but also speaks love at the same time. And at that time, I hadn't made that change in my life, and so I didn't really know what I was talking about. And now that I'm living that every day, there's nothing more gangster than saying, hey, this is what I stand for. You know what I mean? And really being about it. So.
That's right. Isn't this amazing to hear your man? It's crazy, huh? I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. You know why it's so beautiful? Is because to the average person, all they see is someone who's banking on shoes, making money, living the good life. But what I love is that you are bringing the culture of the kingdom. You are the paradox. God is using you to break the rules.
Yeah, and I just kind of came to this realization, like I was like, man, what am I gonna touch on? And after you slid in my DM, I was like, we got on the phone and I was telling my wife, like, man, I just really wish that the brand could like speak for itself. And I didn't start this brand to like be on platforms like this. And we don't know where God wants to take us. We just have to be obedient. We just have to be willing. And nothing about what I'm doing is trying to make the kingdom cool. I think if you, by trying to make God's kingdom cool, you somehow devalue it. This isn't about trends. This is life and death. This is eternal. This is the foundation for which everything is from. And it's I would never, belittle it by trying to make it cool or make it something which we think has value. And so all I'm trying to do with fear of God is say, God, I'm so honored that I get to like get up and dress like this every day and take care of my family through this gift you've given me. So I'm gonna honor you. The world's gonna know where my gifts come from. The world's gonna know, and that's what fear of God is.
Come on, everybody, give it up for Jerry Lorenzo tonight. Come on, stand to your feet. Thank you, Jerry.